At 5:47 on a Thursday morning in the central Persian Gulf, an Iranian SH-3 Sea King helicopter lifted off from a naval air facility on the coast and turned southwest. The crew had been briefed the previous evening. The mission was simple, the commander had said. The Americans had a destroyer operating on a known patrol track between the Strait of Hormuz and the central Gulf. The destroyer would be at reduced readiness in the pre-dawn window, its crew in the low alertness trough of the mid-watch. The SH-3 would close from the north while still below radar horizon, make a series of aggressive passes, record the footage, and return before full sunrise. Iranian state television would broadcast the video as evidence of IRGCN operational reach. The propaganda value, the commander explained, was enormous. What the commander did not say, because he did not know, was which American destroyer his crew was flying toward. The answer was the USS Cole. This is where the story earns its title. The USS Cole is not simply a destroyer. It is, among people who follow these things, a ship with a particular history and a particular institutional memory. After the incident in Aden Harbor in October 2000, the ship was rebuilt, recommissioned, and returned to service with a crew that understood, at a level no briefing can fully convey, why the force protection measures that other ships sometimes treat as procedural formalities are, on Cole, treated as religion. The sailors who serve aboard her, none of them the same crew from that October, carry the weight of institutional memory regardless. The ship's culture around readiness is different. Not paranoid, not performative. Just different. In the way that a thing is different after it has been tested in the most specific and definitive way possible. The SH-3 crew had picked the wrong ship to try to catch napping. At 5:31, 16 minutes before the SH-3 lifted off from the coastal facility, the AN/SPS-67 surface search radar aboard the Cole had already acquired a contact on the Iranian air station's flight line. Not the helicopter itself yet, but the support vehicle positioning alongside the aircraft, the ground power unit, the refueling truck. The Cole's watch section was tracking not just the sea lanes, but the coastline pattern of activity with the methodical attention that comes from a ship whose culture takes the first hint seriously. The contact was logged. The watch officer noted the pre-dawn activity at a facility that did not typically show pre-dawn activity. He did not sound alarms. He picked up his coffee, which was, unusually, still warm, because the mid-watch on Cole runs its CIC with a coffee rotation that someone instituted years ago and nobody has thought to change. He told the petty officer on the scope to keep watching. He was watching when the SH-3 lifted off at 5:47 and began its southwest transit toward the Gulf. The SH-3 Sea King entered Iranian naval service before the revolution, purchased from the United States as part of a military assistance package that seemed, in the early 1970s, like a perfectly sensible arrangement between two aligned governments. The helicopter was considered advanced at the time. Its APN-130 Doppler navigation radar was considered a genuine capability. Its General Electric T-58 turboshaft engines were considered reliable. These assessments were accurate when they were made. They were made approximately 50 years ago. In the intervening decades, the Islamic Republic of Iran has maintained its SH-3 fleet with the determination and creativity of people who understand that replacement is not an option. Spare parts from the original U.S. supply chain have long since ceased to exist. The Iranian aviation maintenance community has developed a cottage industry of reverse-engineered components, cannibalized assemblies taken from non-airworthy airframes, and improvise solutions that would cause a Boeing-quality engineer to experience something between professional admiration and existential distress. The result is a fleet of helicopters that are genuinely airworthy. Iranian maintenance crews are skilled, careful people who take seriously the task they have been given, but airworthy in the way that a classic car is roadworthy, with the understanding that certain dashboard warning lights have been taped over because the part they are warning about will never be replaced, and certain systems are simply no longer connected because their function has been superseded by a workaround. The SH-3 approaching the Cole that Thursday morning had an APN 130 radar that worked intermittently, an IFF transponder that the crew had been told was serviceable, but that was transmitting on a slightly off-nominal frequency because the frequency control oscillator had drifted and no calibration standard existed to correct it. This was, from the perspective of the Cole's electronic warfare operators, genuinely useful information. The off-nominal IFF transmission was recorded from the moment the helicopter appeared on radar, logged against the known Iranian SH-3 fleet profile, and flagged as a new variant characteristic. The intelligence warfare officer noted it with the quiet satisfaction of someone who finds an unexpected coin in a jacket pocket. Small. Free. Welcome. The Cole's AN/SLQ-32V-2 electronic warfare system had classified the helicopter's radar emissions within 40 seconds of first detection. The APN-130's pulse characteristics, vintage 1960s technology, a waveform profile that U.S. electronic intelligence systems could identify the way a music teacher identifies a student playing a wrong note, were matched against the threat library in less time than it takes to read this sentence. The contact was logged as an Iranian naval SH-3, probable IRGCN affiliation, non-threatening in capability, approaching on what the tactical action officer described in his log simply as a profile consistent with a harassment run. The tactical action officer had written those words before. On this ship, that particular phrase sat in the log with a weight it might not have carried on another. The Cole was not at reduced readiness. The Cole is never at reduced readiness in the way that a ship with a different history might be at reduced readiness at 5:47 on a Thursday morning in the Gulf. The general quarters stations were not manned. That would have been excessive for a helicopter conducting a harassment profile from Iranian territorial waters at range. But the watch was sharp, the systems were up, and there was a petty officer on the 25mm Mark 38 chain gun mount at the forward position who had been there since 5:30. Because the watch section rotated early on this ship, and the 5:30 watch had noted the coastal pre-flight activity in the log and thought quietly that it might be worth having eyes on deck. Here is the vulnerability window that this story requires to be honest. The Cole was at anchor for a scheduled maintenance evolution at 0547. Not underway. At anchor, 7 nautical miles from the nearest significant deep water corridor in the Central Gulf, with her engineering plant in a reduced configuration that would require approximately 12 minutes to bring to a full power underway state. An anchored ship is a constrained ship. She cannot maneuver. She cannot accelerate away from a closing contact. Her defensive geometry is fixed by the anchor, and while the Mark 38 gun, the CIWS Phalanx Block 1B, and the ship's full array of sensors were all operational, the fundamental fact of being stationary in a body of water with a helicopter closing from the north was a tactical constraint that the watch section was fully aware of. The distance between the SH-3's initial radar acquisition of the Cole and the moment of closest approach would be determined entirely by the Iranian crew's intent and their fuel state. The helicopter carried enough fuel for approximately 2 hours and 40 minutes of flight at its cruise profile. At the distance from the coastal facility to the Cole's anchor position, the crew had time for a meaningful harassment evolution before they needed to turn for home. They had planned for this. The fuel state gave them an opportunity window. What it did not give them was time to think about what was listening. The SH-3 descended to approximately 200 feet above the water as it crossed from Iranian territorial waters into the international waters of the Central Gulf. The crew activated the APN-130 radar. The old Doppler system wheezed to life in the way that old systems do, with a slight power-up delay and a frequency signature that was as distinctive to the Cole's EW suite as a fingerprint, and began its terminal approach to the Cole's position. The helicopter was now 23 nautical miles from the ship. At its approach, a speed of approximately 120 knots, that was 11 minutes to closest approach. The watch officer on the Cole's bridge was informed. He acknowledged with the tone of a man who has done this before on a different ship and with the additional weight of a man who serves on this particular ship. He noted the contact in the log. He told the petty officer at the Mark 38 station that they had a contact inbound, identity classified Iranian naval helicopter, probable harassment profile, to stay sharp and stay calm. The petty officer said he was sharp and he was calm. He was not wrong. At 5:58, 11 minutes into the SH-3's approach, the helicopter reached the Cole's position and began its first pass at approximately 150 feet altitude and a lateral distance of 400 meters from the ship's port beam. The APN-130 radar was painting the Cole with a return that, from the helicopter's perspective, probably looked like a reasonably sized warship sitting very still in flat water. From the Cole's perspective, the return looked like a 50-year-old helicopter, making a slow, loud pass at low altitude while broadcasting its position, its IFF anomaly, its radar characteristics, and, because the crew was communicating with their base on an unencrypted frequency, its fuel state, its crew status, and a running commentary on what the ship looked like from 150 feet. The intelligence warfare officer called the commanding officer at 5:59. "Sir," he said, "they're transmitting in the clear and I have their fuel state." The commanding officer told him to log everything. "Already logging," the intelligence warfare officer said. He was, at that moment, the most content person on the ship. He had been in the Gulf for 4 months. The deployment had been professionally thorough, but not, until this moment, particularly interesting from an intelligence collection standpoint. The SH-3 was making his morning considerably more valuable. Let us be specific about what the Cole's AN/SLQ-32 was collecting during the approximately 47 minutes that the SH-3 spent in the Cole's sensor environment. Because this is the part of the story that never appears in Iranian state media. The APN-130 radar emission profile, including the specific drift characteristics of the frequency control oscillator, was recorded in complete technical detail. This emission signature was new to the threat library. Previous collections from IRGCN SH-3 had not captured this particular frequency drift profile, which suggested either a fleet-wide oscillator aging phenomenon or a maintenance variant specific to this airframe. Either way, it was now in the library. The IFF transponder anomaly was characterized fully: frequency offset, pulse timing, reply pattern. This created a unique electronic fingerprint for this specific helicopter. The capability that allows a ship's combat system to identify this particular aircraft from its IFF response alone, without needing visual identification or radar cross-section analysis. The communications intercepts filled 2 pages of the intelligence annex. The crew had discussed, in unencrypted voice, their fuel state at 3 separate points during the evolution, the maintenance status of the APN-130, its work in the day, the altitude they were holding, their next planned pass heading, and, at one point, a complaint about the cabin heating system that the intelligence warfare officer logged with the note, "Not operationally significant, but included for completeness." This last detail made the executive officer laugh when he read the annex. It was, he said, the most honest piece of reporting he had seen in 4 months. The SH-3 made 3 passes over the Cole during its harassment evolution. The first from the port beam. The second, at 6:09, from the starboard bow, slightly lower and closer, approximately 300 meters. The third, at 6:21, a slow orbit of the ship at 250 meters, during which the crew recorded their own footage from a camera mounted in the door position. This was the propaganda footage. From the footage's perspective, it showed a large gray warship sitting in flat water with a helicopter flying around it. It did not show what the warship was doing to the helicopter electronically during the orbit, which was everything described above, plus a full passive radar cross-section profile of the SH-3 at multiple aspect angles, which the AN/SPS-67 was building with the methodical patience of a museum curator cataloging a new acquisition. Now, let us talk about the SH-3's APN-130 radar for a moment, because the equipment deserves proper treatment before the humor catches up with it. The APN-130. Doppler navigation radar was designed in the early 1960s and entered service in the mid-1960s as part of the Sea King's original U.S. Navy fit-out. It was a competent system for its era, providing the helicopter's crew with ground speed and drift information useful for overwater navigation at low altitude. In 1965, that was meaningful capability. The radar used vacuum tube technology in certain stages of its signal processing chain. Vacuum tubes were, in 1965, an entirely appropriate engineering choice. They are not, in the current decade, what most engineers would select for a frontline military aviation sensor. The tubes in the APN-130 aboard this specific SH-3 had been replaced, creatively using components sourced through channels that the Iranian aviation logistics community does not discuss openly, at least 3 times in the past decade. The most recent replacement had introduced the frequency drift that the Cole's EW suite was now cataloging with such evident satisfaction. The APN-130's maximum range was approximately 45 nautical miles against a large surface target. The Cole's AN/SPS-67V 3 surface search radar, by comparison, was acquired the helicopter at approximately 31 nautical miles before the crew had finished their pre-flight checklist. The Cole knew the SH-3 was coming before the SH-3 knew exactly where the Cole was. This is the kind of asymmetry that does not appear in parade footage. The helicopter cost, by any reasonable current valuation, approximately the same as a moderately well-equipped civilian medical helicopter. Perhaps $4 to $5 million if you are being generous about the value of 50-year-old airframes with improvised parts. The AN/SLQ-32 system that spent 47 minutes cataloging its every electronic characteristic costs as part of a fully fitted destroyer package, approximately $35 million. The intelligence value of what was collected during those 47 minutes is not priced in dollars because intelligence value is not priced that way. But if you were to estimate the cost of achieving equivalent collection through other means, satellite tasking, dedicated signals intelligence aircraft, long-duration surveillance assets, you would arrive at a number considerably larger than the SH-3's own assessed value. The IRGCN had flown a 50-year-old helicopter to conduct a propaganda run and had inadvertently funded, through the sheer proximity of its presence, a morning's worth of intelligence collection that cost the U.S. Navy nothing but the time of one very satisfied intelligence warfare officer. At 6:29, the SH-3 turned northeast and began its return transit to the coastal facility. Fuel state, as the Cole's intelligence section had already noted from the crew's own transmissions, was the determining factor. The helicopter had reached its turnaround point. It climbed to 500 feet for the transit home, the APN 130 cycling off as the crew shifted navigation modes, the communications traffic tapering to brief position reports that were logged until the helicopter's transmissions faded beyond useful collection range at 0644. The Cole remained at anchor for another 2 hours while the maintenance evolution completed. The engineering plant was brought to full power readiness at 8:15. The ship was underway by 8:30 on her scheduled patrol track, as if the morning had been entirely routine, because from an operational standpoint, it had been. The incident log noted the SH-3 harassment run in 5 lines. The intelligence annex ran to 11 pages. This disproportion, 5 lines of incident, 11 pages of collection, is worth dwelling on because it encapsulates something about how the U.S. Navy approaches these encounters that Iranian operational planners apparently continue to find difficult to account for. A harassment run is, by definition, meant to impose a cost. The cost is supposed to be political. The footage demonstrates IRGCN capability and reach, forces an American response that can be characterized as defensive, and generates the propaganda product that will be broadcast by evening. This is a coherent theory of asymmetric pressure. It works on the assumption that the ship being harassed is primarily a target, and that the helicopter is primarily an asset. In this framing, the IRGCN comes away with footage, and the Americans come away with an annoying morning. The framing is wrong in one significant respect. The ship being harassed is not primarily a target. It is an intelligence collection platform that also happens to be a warship. The moment the helicopter activates its radar and enters the ship's sensor environment, the ship's collection operation begins. The harassment run is, from the ship's perspective, an invitation. The longer the helicopter stays, the better the collection. The closer it approaches, the higher the signal-to-noise ratio. The more the crew talks on unencrypted frequencies, the more complete the communications profile. An IRGCN harassment run against a U.S. Navy destroyer is not a predator circling prey. It is, in the technical intelligence sense, closer to a specimen walking voluntarily into a laboratory and sitting down under the microscope. The Cole's intelligence annex would be transmitted to 5th Fleet headquarters, processed by signals intelligence analysts, incorporated into the updated threat library, and distributed via the standard intelligence sharing protocols to every U.S. Navy combatant in the theater. The next time an Iranian SH-3, this specific one, or any of the fleet that shared its maintenance variants, approached a U.S. asset, every ship within data link range would have the electronic fingerprint preloaded, the IFF anomaly characterized, and the engagement geometry pre-calculated before the helicopter had finished its first pass. The IRGCN had paid for this intelligence product with their own fuel and their own transmission time. The U.S. Navy had paid for it with one warm cup of coffee and 47 minutes of an intelligence warfare officer's thoroughly enjoyable morning. The petty officer at the Mark 38 station secured his mount at 6:35 and went below for breakfast. He noted in the watch log that the helicopter had made 3 passes and departed without incident. He did not consider this remarkable. On this ship, professional calm in the presence of a provocation is not a personality trait. It is a standard. At approximately 10:30 Tehran time, IRGCN Media released a short video clip accompanied by a statement describing the morning's operation as a demonstration of IRGCN capability to monitor and respond to American naval presence in the Persian Gulf. The footage showed the helicopter footage from the door camera. A gray destroyer sitting in flat water, the helicopter's shadow passing across its deck on the 3rd orbit, the American flag visible at the stern. The statement described the American ship as having been placed under continuous surveillance and monitored throughout by IRGCN forces, which was technically accurate in the same way that it is technically accurate to describe a medical scan as the patient having been thoroughly examined. Correct in letter, meaningfully incomplete in spirit. What the footage did not show was the 11-page intelligence annex that had been transmitted to 5th Fleet headquarters by 8 o'clock. It did not show the IFF fingerprint that now allowed any U.S. Navy combatant in the theater to identify this specific helicopter from its transponder alone. It did not show the APN 130 frequency drift profile now sitting in the threat library, or the communications transcript with its 3 fuel state reports and 1 heating system complaint. It did not show the commanding officer of the USS Cole reading the intelligence summary at 7:45 with the expression of a man who has just been given a thoroughly comprehensive briefing on something he had arranged to have thoroughly briefed. The IRGCN believed they had conducted surveillance on an American warship. They had. The American warship had simultaneously conducted surveillance on them at a level of technical detail that no airborne reconnaissance pass could have matched, using nothing but the helicopter's own emissions, delivered voluntarily at close range over 47 minutes. The footage on IRGCN Media was professional. The 11-page annex was more useful. The intelligence warfare officer submitted his debrief by 9 o'clock. It was thorough, organized, and in one section, very slightly amusing. The commanding officer approved it with one annotation in the margin beside the heating system complaint. The annotation read, "File separately." Could be useful. Whether that was a joke depends on how well you know the Cole. Bye for now.